Hey everybody, welcome back to the Jack and Jeremy show. We appreciate you coming back. Uh, and today we are going to be talking about our relationships with money. Last week we talked about the frameworks and our experiences having to make serious decisions to stop what we were doing to pursue something else. And we feel like we had a good time talking about that. And so this time we're going to take it in a little bit of a different path and, for lack of better words, talk about our relationships with money. What do you say, Jeremy?
I think it sounds great.
Awesome. So I guess, this is a topic that we both agreed to talk about because I think it's interesting. I think it's something that everyone obviously has to deal with. And at the same time, I feel like, in thinking back, people talk about financial planning and they talk about, planning for the future and all of that stuff and living within your means. But I think people don't really talk about people's relationship with money, like how much it actually is used to help them fulfill their goals and their passions and things like that. And also just like knowing what it is that you spend money on that provides utility to you, what doesn't. And I think each of us has spent a good amount of time either consciously or subconsciously wrestling with this, major component of life. And I think that's what kind of spurred this conversation. Jeremy, do you want to, is there something, either questions you have to start or you want to jump in, or otherwise I can, I'm always happy to keep talking.
Yeah, no, I guess I just want to mention how maybe we started talking about money. I think awesome, in my opinion, awesome news of last week was the GameStop news. Basically, and you actually alluded to, you were talking about GameStop about like 3 weeks ago in one of our meetings. I don't think we recorded it in the podcast, but like right after the podcast, we were talking about it. I kind of wish I was listening to you more. I know you said, like they got a new board member, they were thinking about rebranding, but I think you mentioned something about Reddit even, and I kind of didn't listen too much to that. I still feel like I heard about everything that was going to happen a little before mainstream or most people, but it was a little bit too late. I was also a little bit nervous to act upon it. In case you didn't hear, or just to summarize what I'm talking about, basically there was a congregation of people on Reddit under the subreddit Wall Street Bets who basically saw that there is a huge short position by mostly Melvin Capital, a big hedge fund. There's about 140% of the float was in short sells, which means there was more shares that they wanted to sell that they didn't even have than there were in existence of shares. So a huge red flag right there. Basically, it's kind of like a naked short, but naked shorts were supposed to be made illegal in '08, but there's some loopholes that still make them possible. People on Reddit were able to expose that. Pumped up GameStop from like $20 to 400. Melvin Capital subsequently lost like $10 billion, almost all their money, something like that. People are still disputing or debating how much they actually lost. But that's basically what got us into talking about money. And I had actually said, like, I think money is like a drug. And I feel like a lot of people, maybe not everyone, a lot of people have addictive tendencies towards money. I've had addictive tendencies towards substances in the past, and I definitely think I have addictive tendencies towards money. I just see a lot of similarities, and that is basically, I think, how we kind of started talking about relationships with money and what our relationships are like.
Yeah, I think you nailed that. Uh, I think people definitely are, if not addicted to money, and these are obviously generalizations, but addicted to something involving money, either buying themselves like candy or their coffee or something like that. Uh, but it's it's something that each of us has to manage, whether it's consciously or not. And, addiction is really just a bad habit. So, a lot of times we may not even think of it as an addiction. It's just a bad habit. So it's your spending habits. It's if you need to rein in your spending, and you're going out to eat a lot, or you are ordering food in instead of cooking. You may not call it addiction, but if you do it over a long enough period of time and you do it consistently enough, it's a bad habit, especially if you are very aware that you shouldn't be eating out and spending the extra money. And so I think that's part of the interesting thing of this conversation is us talking about firsthand experiences and how we evolve our relationship with money, so that in my opinion, when it is used, at least 95% of the time, it's used with intent and purpose to provide real value, real utility, not just a spur of the moment thing. And, Jeremy, I'm happy to dive into some things that I have written down here about my own relationship with money, unless there's firsthand experiences you have that you want to jump into first.
No, I'd love to hear yours. I guess just one question that popped to mind while you were talking. You said something like habit or bad habit, different than addiction. Like, how would you define the difference between a bad habit and an addiction?
To be honest, I think they may be a square rectangle type situation, that by definition, all addictions are bad habits, but maybe not all bad habits are addiction. It's the same way that all rectangles are squares, not all squares are rectangles. And if you think about it, it's because, let's say for me, the firsthand experience is something that I've tried to work on more and more, is putting down my electronics, turning electronics off an hour, 2 hours before I go to sleep. But I still get the urge, I still get the craving to binge watch, not an hour, 2 hours of Netflix or TV, or maybe just go on TikTok for like an hour. That's my, for lack of better words, my social media drug of choice. And what's the difference between that and continuously knowing that I should not be doing those things? It's best for my sleep cycle and the quality of my sleep for me not to be consuming those electronics, versus me, being, and let's do a light addiction, addicted to coffee, or maybe addicted to chocolates. We don't need to talk about what we consider like real harmful substances, but what's the difference between not being able, even though you should ease up on your chocolate intake or your coffee intake, what is the difference between that and then not following through by taking a step back with that, versus things that we don't necessarily consider as often addictions with our electronics or things like that? I don't really know if there is a actual difference.
Well, yeah, and then also what I was gonna say too is, like, can you ever be addicted to something good?
Of course.
Yeah, and I think I mean, I could be off, but I think an addiction is kind of something that you do even when you don't want to do it, basically. So like, for example, if I say I don't want a candy bar, like I'm not trying to eat a candy bar today, but then I still eat the candy bar, I think that's an addiction, because that's doing something that you like intentionally didn't want to do, but you couldn't control yourself to the point where you did it. So another like addiction, I think, that a lot of people, I think like most of America, most of the world is experiencing, especially the youth. And I think it's like causing huge, or it's going to cause huge issues. Hopefully I'm completely wrong, but it's phones and screen addiction. And like, people look at your phone nonstop. Like when I'm talking to you through this screen, sometimes I even look at this screen just to like, I don't even know, I'm hooked to it. I just have to like look and see if I got a notification. And that's like, I think that's an addictive tendency, and that's like an addiction, is basically doing something that I don't need to look at my phone at all. I'm good for the next hour, but I hear a ding and I just look. I'm trained to do it.
Yeah. So as you were talking, I was thinking about this, and the more I think about it, the more I think that the difference between an addiction and a habit, a bad habit, is a bad habit is something that you tell yourself you shouldn't be doing, or subconsciously know you shouldn't be doing, and an addiction is something that you are telling yourself you probably shouldn't be doing, and society is also telling you it. And I think that's kind of the difference. Is an addiction is just something that society has said that this is no bueno. This is not good for being a productive member of society. Because eating the candy bar thing, I think kind of goes both ways. Like, Jeremy, you're not a big guy. Like, who am I to be telling you that you shouldn't be eating that candy bar? But if you're telling yourself that, then like, okay, maybe that's like a bad habit you said. But like, obviously, if it was alcohol or drugs or more potentially debilitating things, then society, if they heard, they would be like, Jeremy, that's not good for you, like blah 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 blah. And so off the cuff, I think if I were to get another chance at defining the difference, I think that's pretty much how I would define it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. We could talk more into that another time. I don't want to go too off. Let's hear about your relationship to money. Something else I have an addictive tendency towards.
Sure. So my relationship with money has been really weird. So I went to a good law school, which helped get me into a really good law firm in New York City, which paid really well. And so my first real job, not like side gigs working here and there to make a little bit of money when I was a student and things like that. My first real job was a job that was paying a lot. And here I'll throw numbers out there. I was getting paid $180,000 a year living in New York City. To make it more concrete. So yeah, it was a lot of money.
New York.
Yeah. And
that's a lot.
It's a lot of fucking money. And I live pretty frugally, but at the same time, you're actually making.
You're not charging right now, are you? I'm not gonna get invoiced.
Not yet. Depends how long this conversation goes. But
Right.
but yeah, so my first experience was making a bunch of money living in New York City, and I didn't live super lavishly, but like if I wanted to get a new pair of jeans, like it wasn't a concern. If I wanted to go out to a nice dinner, it wasn't a concern. If there was friends that wanted to do a spontaneous trip to the Hamptons, then I didn't do it every weekend, but I could look at the numbers and be like, that's fine. And then I went from there to moving to a startup and living in Mexico, and really just like didn't spend money on anything outside of necessities. Don't think I bought more than necessary clothing, like socks and underwear, in like a couple of years now. Like the sweatshirt's probably like 8-10 years old. Gadgets and gizmos, like I have a $200 Chromebook computer that I'm realizing now I need to get a better computer because it's dying again on me. Like I just don't spend money on things, and I thought for a while I was just gonna like continue to live really frugally, because it's just, what do I need money for? Like I need to live, but like I don't need to be spending money on things that I find that other people needed to, fancy cars and fancy clothes and things like that. And I actually recently came across, not that recently, but came across like this idea where it was talking about dating and attracting a significant other. And it really hit home with me. And the basic idea was to throw numbers out there. If you want to, date an 8, like an 8 out of 10, it's important to remember that an 8 out of 10 is going to want to date a certain type of person as well. And
an 8 out of 10 personality or overall or looks.
I think it's the overall package, in my opinion. Like
right,
no, like looks are important, but to be honest, my friends will tell you, like, I'll be the first person that, like, if a girl's super attractive, but that's her best quality, she can't hold up a conversation, then like I'm just gonna get annoyed with her and walk away. Like, it's just not gonna do anything for me. Like, your looks are cool, it'll help start a conversation, but like your substance in your mind is what's gonna keep me interested.
I'm honored that you've stayed on the line with me then.
What's that?
I said I'm honored that you've stayed talking to me for so long then.
Yeah, well, this is when trying to find a spouse. I lower the score when I look for other humans. But no, but what I'm getting at is what this person was talking about that I saw online is that if you want to date an eight, you also need to recognize what eights want out of you, or what eights are looking for, and or nines, or whatever they are. And if I want to date an eight, that's a high value person. They are someone, or the type of, and what I mean by that is there's someone that is professionally and personally ambitious. There's someone that is intellectually curious. There's someone that is serious about themselves. They can have fun. They know how to have fun. They've developed out like a personality and a sense of adventure. And they know what they want. They're not wishy-washy and things like that. And I say this because what would a female eight want in a male eight? Well, they're going to want someone who, besides looks, is also going to be someone that can provide, can be a high income earner, can be, not to get into hunter-gatherer territory, but protect them and things like that in, this modern society. And the reason I bring this up in terms of our relationship with money is, for me, it took me a while to realize that I actually, not that I ever neglected really my appearance, but if I want to attract an eight, I also need to make sure that I am attractive for an eight, which means that my clothes are ironed and they're clean, that I do have a sense of fashion and things like that. And so my relationship with money has kind of evolved a little bit from being extremely fortunate to living extremely frugally to now being a little bit more tempered, being like, I need to get a car because I'm going to be moving down to Florida. I can't just, I could just drive around in, the biggest piece of shit, whatever car, but I also need to recognize that while I don't necessarily need to drive a really high value car, that I may be creating a barrier between me and the people I want to bring into my relationship if I don't recognize that there is a superficial element that we all use to judge prospects, whether it's business or romantic or things like that. And so that's kind of my first tipping off point, is reminding yourself that it's not always about you. It's, if you want something, you also need to recognize what they would want and make sure that you're at least hospitable to their desires, so that it's not just like a binary, no, they're not going to give you the time of day. And I have other stories and things I've learned to add on to it. But that's my first thing that really took me a while to realize that, money, while I'm okay living extremely frugally, for me to attract the type of person that I want to attract, I also need to make sure that I'm keeping up with certain appearances and things. And that's become a new part of my relationship with money.
Yeah, I guess what I struggle to define is what is enough. Yeah, that's basically it, because it seems like a lot of people who have enough money still just try and get more and more and more. And why is that? And I don't know, maybe it depends on how you're getting the money too. The markets that I'm familiar with, or industries I'm familiar with, I guess, are probably real estate and trading, markets, crypto and stocks. So hedge funds, a lot of them are types of pensions. So yeah, they're good. They're trying to make more money for people's pensions, a lot of teachers, whatever. But a lot of those hedge fund managers are making $100 million a year. Why? Is that what is that for?
I'd like to bring it down to the individual, because hedge funds and businesses is a different conversation. But for the individual, something that I read that I think is really interesting is less than 30% of Americans write down their goals, have goals and write them down. And so when you're asking about people making more money and things like that, my next question would probably be, and you're asking, when is enough? I think my question would be, those that don't really know what they're striving for, that haven't crystallized their goals and created a strategy to get there, it's the answer may always be more. They always want more. But for those that actually do that have their goals and have crystallized it and developed a strategy behind it, I imagine the answer isn't, an endless amount of more and enough. It's they feel excited about the journey, they feel fulfilled about it, and when they want to move the bar further, it's just about challenging themselves and developing themselves to be better. I don't think them striving for more is actually an indication that they're not satisfied, or I don't say satisfied because that's not the right word, but that they're unhappy. I think it's just like they've realized that they're capable of more, and so they owe it to themselves to do more and fight for more. But those that don't write down their goals, I think it's a complete mystery. It's just a dog chasing a bus. It has no rhyme or reason. It's just an animal, going back to its animal instincts.
Yeah, I guess I agree completely. So a little bit different question. When you were making a lot of money, were you satisfied?
No, I fucking hated it. Not the money. I hated the job.
No, the money though. Were you satisfied with the money?
I
Did you save a lot? You don't need to answer if you don't want, but like, did
no,
you save?
I saved. I saved a ton, but I also was serious about my health and cooking and things like that. So like for me, I didn't even need to be that conscious about saving. It's just important for me to like eat healthy. So like I cooked a lot, and that's a huge expense in a lot of places, especially in New York. And like I naturally don't crave like the hottest gazmos and whatnot. So yeah, I saved a lot.
When you saved your money, did you have a goal of how much you wanted to save?
No, and I think that was actually a big problem. That now, for the first time in my life, I actually have material goals. I have like a nice little Tesla on my vision board. That's my goal, and it has nothing to do about like, part of it actually has to do about like, the status symbol and things like that. But the other part of it is like, I think Tesla's just an unbelievably cool company. I need to drive a car anyway if I'm moving down to South Florida. So why wouldn't I aspire to like drive a car that is a part of a company that I think is super fucking cool, and at the same time like allows me to like represent myself in a certain way that potentially is attractive to the people that I want to attract into my life.
The eights and up.
The eights and ups. But like if I'm having a podcast with someone, I'll have a podcast with like a Jeremy. What are you, Jeremy?
I consider myself.
No, I'm just messing around.
What's it called? Yeah, no, I agree. I think all of that definitely makes sense. I guess it depends on the person and what they value. I just feel like unfortunately a lot of people have addictive tendencies towards money, and or maybe not towards money, but towards the things, I think you mentioned this, towards the things that money buys, which makes them kind of have addictive tendencies towards money. They just need more and more so they can feed their consumerism or whatever.
I agree. And my question would be to you, do you find that the people that have those tendencies are the same people that have really concrete goals, that are passionate about their goals? Because I find that people that are successful, however you measure that, and are very focused on their goals, are very content to pass up on spending opportunities and addiction to money because they know they're putting money away for an investment or the Tesla that they want or something like that. There's an actual thing. So my question would be for those that are actually exhibiting that addictive behavior, is that a dopamine rush that they're chasing because they don't have a goalpost to be striving for that is of more value than the short-term dopamine rush of buying whatever it is will provide?
I'm glad you said that, because that just reminded me of a study that I had read, which basically said like that dopamine rush, like basically you actually really do get a drug reaction, a drug type reaction when you handle money. And the study I saw was basically they gave people 100 pieces of paper to count, and they gave other people 100 pieces of money to count, 100 like dollars, whatever, to count. And the people who counted the $100 had like chemical reactions, like stimulated, similar to like some drugs, which was, I think, is super interesting with like that's something can do that to you that you're not even like really digesting. I don't know, that's kind of wild.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting study. And yeah, no, I just think it makes a lot of sense. I think if you gave anyone a bunch of money, even if it wasn't theirs, they're gonna, and you ask them to count it, it's gonna make them feel some type of way, almost empowerment or something.
Yeah.
But unless you have something you'd like to tag on, I want to flesh out what I was talking about, like about attracting other people, because I said it in a romantic sense, but I actually want to say something that I learned from Mr. Curtis 50 Cent Jackson in my audiobook about money and things like that, if I have a moment.
I'd love to hear it.
So in the Hustle Smarter, Hustle Harder book, 50 Cent's autobiography that I'm listening to on Audible, that we talked about actually in the last podcast for a little bit. He talked about going into meetings with people, and he mentioned that he had a meeting with this one guy, and he didn't dress super formal. He dressed actually business casual, but he dressed and he fit the role. And what did that mean by it? It means I think this is, maybe it was someone in the music or movie business. I forget the person he's talking about, but he had a fresh pair of kicks on, a pair of sneakers that looked like they're straight out of the box. His jeans were clean, they were crisp, they clearly hadn't been like, wrinkled and whatever. He was wearing a I think he said like a button down or something, whatever. But it had been ironed. It clearly had been ironed. And then he was wearing like rimmed glasses or something. And he juxtaposed this to someone that he's had meetings with that came in with like beaten up sneakers and old, jeans that, fine, whatever, but they've clearly been beaten up, and a whatever t-shirt. And what I'm getting at about like attracting the people that you want to attract in your life is, if you're going into a business meeting, even if you don't, for your own self-worth, feel that you need to dress a certain way, it's important to remember that the person that you're meeting with, especially if it's the first time you're meeting with, they're going to jump to conclusions about you, because we're humans and we have to do as best we can to like make judgments to work off of. And like, it doesn't require spending a lot of money, but like, you still need to represent yourself a certain way to create an open atmosphere, so that like in a business situation, meeting someone, that they'll think of you as someone that's serious. Like if you're closing $100 million deal and you're wearing shirts with like mustard stains on it and stuff like that, you may not get the level of respect that you may want. And so even though the shirt with mustard stains doesn't necessarily do anything for your own self-worth, acknowledging that like, hey, like let me just put on like a jacket and a button down or something, because that's going to help me do what I want in life. It's going to attract the people into my life that I need, so I can accomplish my other goals. And so that's kind of like another thing that I was like reading that made like a bunch of sense, that yeah, it's not always about you. It's about attracting the other people you want in life and making sure you're positioning yourselves so that at least it's not like a no from them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I typically don't like to think like I need to dress well to be able to be trusted. But I guess there's like kind of levels to that. I wouldn't show up to a meeting with stains on it, but I still typically don't like to like go in, let's say, a suit. I feel like that's like what I say and what's on the paper and what the deal consists of should be what the meat of it is. And maybe if I look horrible, that's like a deal breaker. But I typically don't like to like be one of those types. But I do. One, I don't have a lot of big deals, and that might be why. And I do understand the importance. I just typically have been one to not like really do that.
And I think you mentioned something that is really important for me to clarify. I am not, nor for myself or recommend anyone else to go outside their comfort level. Although if you're not comfortable, wearing a jacket and tie, it may be something that occasionally you want to work up to because there may be situations or whatnot. But more of what I'm getting at is in business, or in business, because everything else is pretty much personal. When people do deals, like at the end of the day, if you're involved, they're doing business with you as a human being. So you may have all the numbers on paper and everything may look amazing, but they also need to have trust and be building credibility with you as a person. And
Right.
so that's the other thing. And again, this isn't, you dressing a certain way isn't going to close the deal, but it's creating one less barrier to establishing the credibility and building the rapport that you need so that you can actually accomplish what you want in life. It's making sure that at least they're not looking you and saying, who is this schmuck? At least you're giving them the opportunity to ask you questions and talk rather than them making jump conclusions of, I'm doing business with this guy? Like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
more of what I'm getting at. I'm not telling people to like dress in suits. I'm not telling people to go outside their comfort zone. I'm just saying that like we need to recognize that whether it's romantically or professionally or things like that, people are going to make judgments based on appearances and things like that. And the more we can do to prevent those judgments from being a binary no, the better we can position ourselves to do really what we want to do in life, whether it is romantic or professional or whatever.
Yep. No, makes sense. I think we're probably getting close to what we usually aim for time. Do you want to end with something that you learned this week? Was it an excerpt from that book or something else?
Uh, Yeah. So actually, why don't you go first? I feel like I've been talking, all day and night, which
Sure.
I don't have a problem with, but maybe our viewers do.
All right. Well, I got two little things, I guess. Completely random kind of the things that I came across this week. So one was I guess there might be a little theme for the two viewers that we have. Our mom, hi Mrs. Tenenbaum, but that I like space and planets and astronomy and all of that. So there was in 2017, basically there was an asteroid or comet or whatever, not from our solar system, from another solar system that kind of went into our solar system. And this was the first time ever observed, went into our solar system and then went in between Mercury and Sun. So it was the closest thing to the sun, kind of dipped out of the sun and then went back out. And we were able to see it. And basically, there's a professor at Harvard that so like if you're a professor at Harvard, you think you have some credibility and stuff. This guy's done like astrophysics. I can't even say the work with Stephen Hawking's. So he's done like some really accomplished work. He thinks that basically that thing that came into our solar system, it was the first ever time something from an outer solar system was observed in ours. He thinks it was evidence of a alien spacecraft, or basically part of a spacecraft of aliens from like another solar system. And I just think that's super interesting. One, it's fascinating that I think like the actual event is fascinating. And then I also think like it's fascinating that that this guy thinks it's aliens. I like aliens. I like all that stuff, but also that most of the science community is like, dude, you're nuts. But this guy's like super distinguished. Like he can't be crazy, or can he? Maybe he is, but I don't know. I kind of I think that's like just fascinating that someone so accomplished could have like this one belief that they really that everyone like thinks is just there's no way. And a lot of people like maybe discredit a lot of his other work based on this belief. which I thought was pretty interesting. And then another thing, even more random, or just a completely other topic, Betterhelp.com is like an online therapy, or Betterhelp like app. It's an online therapy. You can like do like real-time messaging and like weekly video conferencing and stuff. But I just learned of that this week, and I think that's awesome. I've always been a proponent of therapy, and I think like that even just makes more sense of having like a real-time person to always reach out to. That was better
Yeah,
help.
no, it's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yep.
All right, so my turn. I'm trying to remember one of the lessons I learned from Mr. 50 Cent this week. I guess something that I learned. You know what? I'm gonna pass because I don't want to say anything that I can't crystallize. I will say something that I don't know for a fact, but I think is happening is that Bitcoin and alt season is coming, and everyone just strap in for an amazing next few months. This is going to be an awesome ride that I've been waiting for the past couple of years. So I don't know this. It's not something I necessarily learned, but I think alt season is coming.
Yeah, I mean, I think alt season might be like alt years.
Yeah.
Because like there's just so much dollars being pumped into the economy, and the dollar's weak, and Bitcoin's supply is fixed. So I definitely agree.
Here's a stat about money supply real quick, and before we head out, a friend actually told me this. It's like almost 25% of all U.S. dollars ever made were created in the past 12 months.
Yep, last year I heard that, and that's why that's going to continue, and Bitcoin is going to see a lot of that money. I feel. Too bad though. If the IRS is watching, make sure they know I've lost all my crypto, so I don't really have any. But I'm sure it'll be good for everyone else. And my dog wanted to. This is Bijou.
Yeah, I will be paying my taxes. But
I wasn't.
Yeah,
I was. I mean, yeah. I don't know. We'll talk about that another time.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening. We hope this was of value. And maybe this helped you rethink your relationship with money a little bit. And we really appreciate your support. So thanks everyone.
All right. Thank you. See you later, Jack. Have a good one, brother.
Peace, guys.